Welcome to your foundations class. In this class, I will guide you through most of the basic postures that you will see on a monthly basis in our sequence. Again, like I talked about before, we will really talk about the foot placement, your hands, and where your gaze should be. But to begin with, we will start to talk about the breath. So you'll hear me say, drop into your Ujjayi breath a lot, okay? What Ujjayi breath is it's in and out through the nose, okay, with a slight constriction at the back of your throat. Often people will describe it as that sensation of fogging up a mirror, but with the mouth closed, okay? So we can try it a few times. So we go in through the nose and out through the nose and continue on from there. This breath takes practice, but it will come and it will be the most important part of your practice. You'll hear me talk about it over and over and over again, but eventually it'll start to just flow a little bit more naturally, okay? So to begin practice, let's start onto our hands and knees. And let's shift into that Ujjayi breath, okay? So let's start to organize the body here. Bring your shoulders directly over your wrist. Spread your fingers nice and wide, and make sure that your hips are directly over your knees. Tops of the feet pushing down into the mat. Good. Now you will hear me talk about that central core line a lot. This offers us stability in almost all the postures we do. That core line starts at the pelvic floor. It draws all the way up the stomach and then up through to the crown of the head. So to start to engage it, let's draw the pelvic floor up. Good, so almost that sensation like you are stopping yourself from peeing, right? So it might sound funny, but again, it's just that sensation of stopping there. So pull that up, good. Draw your belly button towards your spine and push into that upper back. You can feel how much more sturdy and strong you already are here, right? Good, we'll work with the spine to start. So we're gonna move into cat-cow. So with your inhale through the nose, your gaze is gonna come up. We drop the belly down towards the mat, curl the tailbone up and arch the spine. Good, and with your exhale, push the opposite direction. So push down into the mat and start to curl that spine up towards the sky. Push into your hands and your knees. Beautiful. Keep moving with your breath. Inhale, gaze up. And exhale, curl. Good, let's do a few more here. Find that breath. We're just starting to create more space and unwind any stress that is being held in the spine. Good, let's come back into a neutral spine. From here, let's tuck our toes and move into a downward facing dog. So in downward facing dog, our hands stay shoulder width apart. We start to lift and straighten the legs and become, eventually the feet are flat out to the mat, but your heels can be lifted to start. And let's bring a big bend into the knees. Good. So a lot of the time, first when I see this, people are kind of curled through the spine and the weight is forward. We want to push back into the hands and create a nice, beautiful, long spine here. Gaze is back towards the toes. Now, if this is okay, if you can maintain the length of the spine, you can very gently start to drop the heels down towards the mat, possibly, and maybe even eventually straighten the legs, but there's no rush for this full posture. The last key part of your downward facing dog is we want to curl that tailbone up towards the sky. So it is this action of curling the tailbone up. Beautiful. Let's take 2 more breaths here. Good. From here, let's come down into child's posture. So we bring our knees nice and wide, the width of the mat. Untuck your toes so the tops of the feet are down onto the mat, and walk your hands out in front of you. Let's come to rest the forehead down and settle into the body. So we settle eventually the pelvis down. We settle the breath. This is always a posture you can come into at any point in the practice. If you just need to slow things down, if you need a break, if you need to reset the breath. Good, let's release. Walk your hands back a little bit. We're gonna come in downward facing dog again, so tuck your toes and straighten the legs. Again, find your variation, your depth. From here, let's roll forward into high plank. So shoulders are gonna come directly over your wrists. We are gonna drop the bum, so we are long through to the heels to the crown of the head. Good. From here, drop your knees down onto the mat, and we are going to hug the elbows by our side. So we are going to lower like a push-up until we're hovering above the mat. Keep your gaze forward. Beautiful. Now let's come all the way down onto the mat. Untuck your toes. Your hands are by your chest, and we're going to push into cobra. So very gently start to lift your chest up. Good. Let's lower the chest back down. Push back onto your knees, tuck your toes, and push back into downward facing dog. Okay. Let's do that again, adding on. Come forward into high plank. Let's drop our knees. Let's bend the elbows. This is called Chaturanga Dandasana. So hugging the elbows to your side, hover above the mat. Good. Come all the way down. Untuck your toes. Let's push into cobra. Or if this feels okay, you're going to push your chest all the way up into upward facing dog. In upward facing dog, you want to roll your shoulders down your back. Your gaze is forward. Eventually it comes up towards the sky. The legs are engaged and strong. Tops of the feet pushing down. Good. Let's drop the knees back down onto the mat. Push your weight back. Curl your toes, downward facing dog. Let's bring our gaze forward. Let's walk our feet all the way towards our hands. Good. Now let's rest our hands onto our shins to start. Inhale, push your hands against your shins. Gaze comes up, push long through the spine. And exhale, fold forward. Draw your belly button towards your legs. Inhale, find your feet. Let's rise all the way up. Arms come with you. Gaze comes up. And then we bring our hands in front of heart center into Samastitihi. Beautiful. Let's do a full sun salutation now. So let's bring your big toes together, heels slightly apart. With your inhale, bring your arms up towards the sky. Exhale, we fold forward. Hands come down either onto the shins or your mat. Good. Inhale, gaze comes up. Long through the spine. Let's plant the hands down onto the mat and walk your feet back into high plank. Shoulders over your wrist. Good. Either lower here into your full Chaturanga Dandasana or drop your knees. Lower your elbows by your sides. Hover above the mat. Good. Let's come all the way down. Untuck your toes. We're pushing into cobra or upward facing dog. Good. Let's drop our knees down onto the mat. Tuck your toes. Downward facing dog. Find that breath. Beautiful. Let's bring our gaze forward. Walk your feet to the top of your mat. Let's take our hands onto our shins or leave them down onto the mat. Push against. Inhale, long through the spine, gaze forward. And exhale, fold in. Inhale, let's come all the way up. And arms by your side and through heart center. Samastitihi. Beautiful. Let's do one more, just to really get the idea of these sun salutations. So big toes together, heels slightly apart. Inhale, let's rise up with the arms. Exhale, we fold forward, hands onto the shins or onto the mat. Inhale, long through the neck, long through the spine, gaze up. Plant the hands down onto the mat, step back into high plank. Shoulders over your wrists. Let's drop our knees down onto the mat and lower Chaturanga Dandasana. Hug those elbows to the side. Keep your gaze forward. Let's come all the way down and tuck your toes. Inhale into cobra or upward facing dog. Good. Drop the knees. Tuck the toes. Downward facing dog. Let's bring our gaze forward. Walk your feet all the way towards your hands. Good. Inhale, gaze comes up long through the spine. And exhale, we fold. Inhale, let's come all the way up. Gaze comes up towards your fingertips. And then arms through heart center. And by your side into Samastitihi. Very good. Now, let's start with some of our warrior postures. So let's take a big step back with your right foot. We're coming into Virabhadrasana A in Warrior One. Your right toes are going to point straight towards the back of your mat here. Your left toes are angled towards the side. Okay? So a lot of the times what I see here is people's back foot is turned way out here. And they can't adjust their hips to the front of their mat. So just take that back foot and turn it more in. You see the difference in the hip? Good. Now let's sink into this front knee so that it's stacked directly over your ankle. And adjust the feet accordingly, right? We'll also start to sag here into this back leg, so really pull up and find this central line. Now, hands can either stay onto the hips, or they can go above your head, palms together, or apart slightly if you need more space in the shoulders. Good. We want to engage the pelvic floor. Draw the belly button towards the spine. One more breath here. Beautiful. Let's take a break. Inhale, straighten your front leg. Move into warrior two. So take this back foot. Now angle it directly to the side of the mat. Let's sink back into this front knee. Good. So a good way to gauge if your feet are in the right place, your front heel should be in line with your back arch. Okay? Inhale, let's come up with the arms. Good. Our gaze can either be straight through to that middle finger of your right hand, or often I'll ask students to bring their head straight forward here so the pelvis is in line with the crown of the head. Good. Good. Inhale, straighten that front leg. We're going to move into side triangle, Utthita Trikonasana. The feet stay exactly where they are. Our arms come up. We want to shift and reach forward with that right hand as far as we can, and then drop your right hand onto your shin, left arm up towards the sky. Inside triangle, the legs are straight, okay? We're pulling up on the kneecaps. We're strong down into the feet without clenching the toes. Now the arms are stacked here, nice and long. And if you have more room, you just keep working that right hand down closer to the mat. Okay, let's find our feet. Inhale, pull up on the pelvic floor to draw yourself all the way up. And we'll switch sides. So let's rotate the feet around. Now your left toes are going to be towards the front of the mat. Back toes kind of angled at that same place where we did warrior one on the other side. Let's bend into this front knee. If you're having a really hard time squaring the hips, you need to adjust this back foot, okay? So just turn it in slightly. Good. Hands either onto your hips, up towards the sky together or apart. A lot of the time we start to lose the connection to the torso, so just make sure you're really strong through here, supporting the body. How is your breath? Beautiful. Let's straighten that front leg. We're going to open up into warrior two, so adjust that back foot. Again, now it's pointed directly to the side of the mat, and we will sink back into that front knee. Make sure the heel is in line with the back arch. Arms are up, and we'll sink in. Again, gaze will just depend on the sequence and what I'm asking you to do, either straight directly out the left fingertip or straight forward here. Good. Good, let's inhale, straighten your front leg. Coming to side triangle, shift the weight forward. Keep extending the left fingertips as far forward as you can. And then left hand comes onto your left shin, right hand up towards the sky. Beautiful. Now watch that back foot. Sometimes we'll really roll in. I want you to find the outer edge of the back foot and see if you can find that balance point here. We're breathing together. One more inhale. And with your exhale, let's rise all the way up. Bring your arms with you. Gaze towards the top of your mat, and we're going to step our right foot forward to meet our left. Okay? Now let's take another vinyasa. We usually take these to kind of reset the breath, kind of reset the pace, and even the mind in our practice. So inhale, let's come on up with the arms. Gaze comes up. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, gaze comes up. Let's plant the hands, step back into high plank. Good, shoulders over your wrists, drop your knees. First engage the abs, pull up on the pelvic floor, and then lower, Chaturanga Dandasana. Come all the way down. Untuck the toes, hands are by your chest. Inhale into cobra or upward facing dog. In upward facing dog, our gaze is either straight forward or eventually a little bit up towards the sky. Good, let's place our knees down onto the mat. Shift your weight back, tuck your toes, downward facing dog. Beautiful, gaze comes forward. Let's walk our feet towards our hands. Coming to the top of our mat. Hands either onto the mat or your shins. Inhale, gaze comes up, long through the spine, through the neck. And exhale, we fold. Inhale, let's come all the way up. We're strong through the legs. Everything is pulling and extending us up towards the sky. And then release the hands by your side into Samasthiti. Beautiful. Now let's work on our balancing posture. So let's come to the center of our mat. Most of our sequence will always have some form of balance, right? Good. So our feet should be about hip distance apart. Make sure that your heels are in line with your pinky toe. A lot of the time they're kind of turned in like this. It'll feel awkward to start, but that is the right structure and placement of that foot. Good, let's keep our hands onto our hips. Now simply watch how you're standing here. A lot of the time we'll be dumping kind of into this lower back and sticking our bum out, right? This is kind of the position that a lot of us will even just stand in. So we need to curl the tailbone underneath us. You can feel a huge difference there, right? Now, this line of the back is super long and beautiful and strong. Good. Let's shift all the way into that right foot and become really light into the left toes. For some of us, this is going to be challenging. We're going to stay here. Maybe trying to lift the left toes off the mat just slightly. Okay. If this feels okay, let's come on up with that left knee, and possibly your left hand is going to catch onto it. Good, let's flex the foot. Now I'll talk about a drishti, or a focal point. So our gaze comes forward, and a drishti is just something that we can stare at to help the balancing. The last key part of balancing is to have a steady breath. Beautiful. Let's bring our hand onto our hip, keep lifting the knee, and then very gently place it down onto the mat. Good, let's switch sides, very good. Let's align that foot so the heel is in line with your pinky toe on the left side. Hands onto your hips. Inhale, let's come light into the right side. Maybe even lifting up the right toes. Or if you feel steady enough, let's come on up with the right knee, catching on with your right hand. Stand tall. Let's flex the right foot. Find your focus and see if you can open the chest so that the posture comes across. It's really confident and steady here. Very good. Keep your knee lifted, hand comes onto your hip, and very slowly place it back down onto your mat. Good. Let's walk back up to the front of our mat. Big toes together, heels slightly apart. Arms by your side. With your next inhale, let's bring our arms above head, palms touch, gaze up. And exhale, fold forward. Hands onto your shins or the mat. Inhale, gaze comes up. Let's plant the hands, step back into high plank. Shoulders over your wrists, let's drop our knees. Find that central cord line, and then lower, Chaturanga Dandasana. Come all the way down onto the mat. Untuck your toes, push into cobra or upward facing dog. Good. Drop the knees down into the mat. Tuck your toes, downward facing dog. Good. Now from here, I want you to bring your right knee in towards your chest and bend really deep into this left knee. Good. So your gaze is going to come forward. Ideally, what we're trying to do is step your right foot in between your hands with the most control and ease. So with your next inhale, gaze forward, you're going to straighten your back knee and step your right foot through. Got that? Yeah, I'm going to do it one more time so you guys can see. So right knee towards your chest, bend the left knee. Okay, gaze forward. With your inhale, straighten the back leg and glide your right foot through. If you need to, grab on and help it a little bit. Beautiful. Let's drop our back knee down onto the mat and bring your hands up onto your hips. So we always work with our Anjaneyasana series, which is these low lunges, okay? So there's usually at least a couple postures in each sequence, so we'll get really familiar with it now. Often, I ask students to back out of the posture just slightly, shift the right hip back, left hip forward. And you can already feel how much more engaged the feet become when we do that, right? So right hip back, left hip forward. The right foot is pulling back, those left toes are digging in. Now, with that steadiness in the pelvis, we can start to sink back in. Now, the last component of this is we tend again to drop into the lower back here. We again need to pull the belly button back towards the spine, pull up on the pelvic floor, and then we have this really long, beautiful, strong structure here. Good. And let's bring our hands back down onto the mat. With your next inhale, straighten your back leg and step back into downward facing dog. Good. Now let's switch sides. Let's hug our left knee into our chest. Good. Bend the right knee really dramatically. Now bring your gaze forward. With your next inhale, we're going to start to straighten the right leg and step your left foot through. Good. Beautiful. Let's drop our back knee down onto the mat. Come on up with the hands onto the hips. Before we come into the full posture, come out slightly. Your left hip comes back, right hip forward, and sink back into that front knee. That knee, ideally we want it stacked directly over your ankle. I'll show you the two biggest mistakes. People are either here at this ankle, or their foot is too close to them, and their knee is coming way past that ankle. You see the difference? Okay. So to protect the knee, make sure that we have that beautiful long line. Good. Let's bring our hands back down to the mat. Inhale, straighten your back leg, and step back, downward facing dog. Good. Let's bring our gaze forward. Let's jump all the way through onto our seat, just so walking your feet all the way through. Let's take our legs straight out in front of us for a forward seated fold. So for our forward seated fold, first make sure that your heels are pressing strongly into the mat, toes up towards the sky. Back of the legs are engaged here. And then we can take our hands underneath our glutes and just shift them off to the side, giving us more of a connection down into the sit bones there. Good. Now, if you look like this in the posture, then you're going to take your hands back behind you and just work on creating that long spine. Okay, and this may be where you have to work for a couple months until we can create sort of that relaxation in the hips and a little more adaptability here through the spine. Okay, if you can stand nice and tall on your own, you're going to come forward and walk your hands forward. Just to the point where you can keep a long spine, your gaze is out past your toes. We usually hold this posture for quite some time, and eventually the body will start to release and unravel, and we can continue to walk our hands forward. Good. Let's walk our hands back, stand nice and tall, and we'll move into a twist. Keep your left foot where it is. Let's bend our right knee up towards the sky. Good. Take a hold of this right ankle and step it across your left leg. So now it's in line with your knee on the outer edge of this left leg. Sit up nice and tall. Make sure those left toes are up towards the sky, heels grounding into the mat. Good. Let's take this left arm, wrap it around your right knee. Right fingertips come back behind you, sit up tall, and gaze over that right shoulder. So one of the biggest things here is I see people kind of collapse into themselves here without a tall spine. You want to rock forward onto your sit bones. Lots and tons and tons and tons of length through the spine first, and then we can twist from this place. Good. Good, let's release. And we'll switch sides, straighten your right leg. Bend your left knee up towards the sky, grab hold, step it to the outer edge of your right foot, or your right knee, sorry. Your right heel is pushing down strongly, sit up tall. Okay, now take that right arm, wrap it around your left knee. Left hand comes back behind you, gaze over your left shoulder. Again, make sure you're sitting up nice and tall here through the spine. We tend to work a lot with our twists because they are brilliant at massaging our internal organs, stimulating digestion, and helping us create that overall health and vitality in the spine that we are looking for. Okay, let's bring our gaze back through center. Let's release. Straighten our legs, and we'll come to lay flat onto our back. Okay, so once you're on your back, we work back bends a lot in these practices. So I'm going to walk you guys through the first 2 stages of back bends. There's 5 in total, and then eventually you can start to add on once you have that foundation. So the structure, feet are flat onto the mat, knees up towards the sky. You should be able to graze your heels with your fingertips. This is how close the heels need to be here to the glutes, okay? Now let's take our hands back beside us, spread your fingers nice and wide. And stage 1, or step 1, is just to push down into the feet and lift the pelvis up towards the sky. You can walk your shoulders a little bit more underneath you, keep rooting down. The strength for our back bends comes from the legs here, okay? Not the glutes necessarily. You could try and release them a little bit and keep rooting down through the feet. Good. If you have the space to add on, you're gonna take your hands up to your lower back and walk your elbows more underneath you. Beautiful. Keep lifting, root down through the feet, and breathe here. Eventually this will turn into our full wheel, but we will start with these 2 foundational postures first. Good, let's release. Take your hands away, roll down through the vertebrae, come down onto the mat, take a big breath. Exhale. One more, inhale. Exhale. Okay, let's draw our knees in towards our chest, wrapping our arms around them, maybe rocking from side to side. Now let's open our arms up nice and wide. Drop both knees over to the right, gaze over towards your left fingertips. At this point in the practice, we can start to slow down that breath. We still consistently want to be working with Ujjayi breath. We want it to guide us right into Shavasana, our final resting posture. And inhale, knees back up through center. Let's switch sides. Beautiful. Let's bring our knees back up through center. And then we are going to move into Shavasana. So Shavasana is our final resting posture. You want to make sure that you're warm and that you're comfortable. So ideally our legs are straight down onto the mat. You want your feet to flop out to the side so that we have tons of relaxation release through the pelvis. Hands can be by your side, up towards the sky if you're practicing earlier in the day, or down towards the mat if it's later in the evening. Good. If that doesn't feel comfortable, feel free to rest them wherever feels good. Now, if this is not comfortable for your lower back, you can place pillows or rolled up blankets underneath your knees or a bolster if you have one, just to find that connection to the lower spine. For Shavasana, we want to completely let go. So we want to let go of the breath. We want it to be smooth and soft and rhythmic. We want the body to let go, the jaw to be released, the tension across the forehead to be gone. It is said in all the ancient yoga texts that Shavasana is one of the most important postures that we can practice. This point where we completely surrender and let go of the control
in order for things to shift and settle as they're meant to be. Let's take a couple more deep breaths here. And with the eyes closed, let's take a couple deep breaths back into the body. And as we're doing that, we can work the knees in towards the chest. Let's take our right arm above our head. Let's roll onto the right side of the body. Resting here as long as you need. And then take your left hand onto the mat in front of you and push yourself up to a comfortable seated position at the top of your mat. If you can, for these final little moments in the practice, try to keep your eyes closed. Keep moving your awareness inwards. Good, let's find our comfortable seat. You can come up onto a block or a pillow. Let's take our hands in front of heart center and take a really big deep breath in through the nose and out through the nose. And very gently you can start to flutter your eyes open, coming back into the space just there in front of you. Thank you very much, everyone.